All right, today we're going to take a deep dive into one of the most powerful branches of the Pakistan Army, the Armored Corps. Let's jump right in. They've got this incredible nickname, the Men of Steel. And really, it's a name that perfectly sums up their job at the very tip of the spear in modern warfare. So, in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how they earned that reputation. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is the Armored Corps? Well, think of them as Pakistan's modern-day mechanized cavalry. They're an absolutely critical piece of the country's entire land defense strategy. So if we look at the official definition, you'll see something interesting. It's not just a bunch of tanks. It's an administrative and combined arms branch. So what does that mean? Well, it means they're kind of like the brain, the central nervous system for all of Pakistan's armored forces, overseeing everything from training and strategy right down to deployment.
All right, let's get a quick snapshot of the Corps. They've been around since 1947, right from the very beginning. They've grown to a massive 52 regiments, and their main hub is in Nowshera Cantonment. And hey, if you ever see them on parade, you'll know it's them by their striking red and yellow colors.
But to really get a handle on what makes this corps tick, we've got to go way back to its very birth, a story that was literally forged in the fire and chaos of the 1947 partition of British India. And it all began with just 6. That's it. Can you believe it? The entire Pakistan Armored Corps started with only 6 regiments that were handed over from the old British Indian Army. Talk about humble beginnings for what would eventually become such a powerhouse. Now, the history here goes way back. I mean, some of the predecessor units trace their lineage all the way to 1773. But the modern Corps, as we know it, was really born in 1947. But here's the real game changer, 1956. This is when Pakistan started aligning more with the West, joining alliances like SEATO and CENTO, and because of that, the Corps made a huge shift. They dropped the old British doctrine and adopted U.S. Army training manuals. This was a massive, massive change that set the course for everything that came after. So that begs the question, right? How did they go from just 6 regiments with hand-me-down gear to what they are today? Well, this next part of the story is all about evolution and just incredible expansion. It's the journey of a small, pretty under-equipped force becoming an absolute powerhouse. And this quote right here, it really paints a picture. Their first set of tools? Far from cutting edge. We're talking about leftover surplus from World War II. Things like the old M4 Sherman tanks, M3 Stuart light tanks, stuff that was already considered outdated. It must have been a real struggle just to keep that equipment running. Okay, so fast forward to today. Just look at that number, 52. From those original 6 regiments that were basically struggling with museum pieces, they've grown to 52 regiments. That's almost a 9 times increase. It's just a staggering testament to how much they've grown and how important they've become. So what does that kind of growth actually look like on the battlefield? Let's talk about the gear. We're going to compare the arsenal back then to what they have now, and I gotta tell you, the difference is just night and day. I mean, look at this technological leap. It's just incredible. On the left, you've got the early days. Yep, that's the good old Sherman tank. But on the right, that's a whole different beast. That's the current lineup of modern main battle tanks, or MBTs. These are the heavily armored, top-of-the-line vehicles that really define today's battlefield. We're talking about things like the Al-Khalid, the T-80UD from Ukraine, and the Chinese VT-4. It's not just an upgrade, it's a complete transformation of firepower. Let's just take a closer look at a couple of these, because they tell a really interesting story. The Al-Khalid, that's a perfect example of modern teamwork, built in partnership with China. It's a huge step towards Pakistan being able to build its own gear. Then you've got the Al-Zarar, which is just brilliant. They took an older tank and completely modernized it, turning it into a seriously formidable weapon. And the VT-4? Well, that's pretty much the cutting edge of what you can buy on the international market. So you see, it's not just about buying new toys. It's a smart strategy of acquiring technology and building up their own industry. Okay, but it's not all about the hardware, right? The tanks and guns are only one part of the story. The entire strategy of the Armored Corps has had to change and adapt to a completely new world. For the longest time, the Corps' main job was pretty straightforward. Keep an eye on the eastern border with India. That was the primary focus. But after 2001, everything changed. Suddenly, they had to shift a huge amount of attention to the western border with Afghanistan. The really incredible thing here is their ability to adapt and operate in what is essentially a two-front environment. That's a massive strategic challenge for any military. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, what you see is this incredible 78-year story of transformation. They went from a tiny force, cobbled together with leftover equipment, to become a central, absolutely essential pillar of Pakistan's entire modern defense. And that really leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? They've gone from inheriting old relics to building their own powerful machines, and they've adapted to entirely new kinds of threats. So, what's next for the Men of Steel?